What exactly makes space so daunting, and even terrifying? Is it that it's mostly nothing for millions of miles in every direction, or is it that we don't know what may be out there? Is it benevolent, or so foreign that what we consider to be evil is just a common occurrence? Upon venturing out, will we find paradise or hell? In the Alien franchise, it's pretty clear that the answer is hell, or at least hell on the planets where the characters look. But what exactly drives them there in the first place? And, given their motivations, do they deserve what happens to them? With Alien Covenant being released, now may be a good time to study the origins of the themes that run through the Alien franchise and see what makes them so effective in creating a sense of horror. The original Alien deals with a lot of important questions about humanity, like, what is it to be human? Are people really so futile and insignificant? The cold, calculating, and unempathetic android Ash in the original Alien is reminiscent of the artificial intelligence HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is a reflection of the cold, overly pragmatic, and egotistical side of human nature. Instead of having HAL and Ash be a direct contrast to the humans in 2001 and Alien, as is done in other depictions of AI as a morality tale to illustrate how inhuman humanity can become, the artificial life forms in both films seem to mirror their human crewmates. There's an emptiness to the characters in 2001 that comes off in very reserved and void personalities, with little to nothing shown in the way of emotion.
You're working up your crew psychology report.
HAL may seem to act more emotional than the people in the film.
It's rather difficult to define. Perhaps I'm just projecting my own concern about it.
But despite this facade, it harbors some soulless motivations that may or may not be a byproduct of the soulless corporation that made it. The characters in Alien are concerned about money.
And what about the money? If you want to give me some money to do, I'd be happy to.
And overly mindful of corporate rules.
How does that happen?
It happens, my dear, because that's what the company wants to happen.
Since when is that standard procedure?
Standard procedure is to do what the hell they tell you to do.
Which sounds familiar because those are the standard behaviors in a workplace environment. The narrative of the blue-collar working stiff who happens to be in space. But perhaps these capitalist tendencies are fostering something soulless. Ash, who was evil, corporately minded, and entirely disinterested in preserving human life, should stand out as being quite inhuman and soulless, but instead he blends right in. The crew and Ash are both bound by the same soulless corporate mindset. HAL and its crew are also involved in the same corporate campaign that drives their motivations and subsequent actions. The soulless corporate mindset is an example of the lows humanity can sink to and a potential path that people can take which can lead to their own personal soulless existence. HAL and Ash are representations of the darker soulless tendencies of mankind. HAL displays the pitfalls of fear, the use of cold, unconscionable logic, and the desire for control at the expense of others.
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
Which can be seen throughout the history of man. Ash admires the alien creature for its supposed purity and how inhuman it is as a survivor.
Unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality.
And HAL thinks so little of humans that it is willing to kill them all to ensure the success of the mission. If HAL, which is a computer, is no different than humanity, displaying both our good and bad features such as introspection.
But during the past few weeks, I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
And intelligence.
I'm sorry, Frank, I think you missed it. Queen to bishop 3, bishop takes queen, knight takes bishop, mate.
But also paranoia.
I know I've never completely freed myself of the suspicion that there are some extremely odd things about this mission.
Fearfulness.
I'm afraid.
And murderousness. What does that say about humanity? Given the narrative of 2001 about man's evolution from soulless ape to human to the superhuman from beyond the infinite, At the human stage, we find man in a stagnant state of evolution, where they are dependent on technology for every little task.
You're the brain and central nervous system of the ship.
Arrogant about what they have accomplished, and vastly ignorant about the unknown in the universe. Speaking of arrogance and ignorance, this brings up a predominant theme in the Alien franchise: egotism breeding stupidity. The crew of the Nostromo, save Ripley for the most part, are, well, dumb. Or at least not smart or adept enough to take on the horrors that await them. The Nostromo crew, as well as those aboard Discovery 1, face something beyond their egos and definitely beyond their little knowledge to combat: evil. For the 2001 crew, a murderous artificial intelligence, and in the Alien franchise, a murderous alien. With all of mankind's efforts in trying to progress, can society only produce a soulless person who is susceptible to evil and arrogant and ignorant about the universe? Another theme shared between 2001 and Alien to illustrate the effects of ignorance and arrogance on humanity is infantilization. Corporations and technology in both films have become what mankind depends on to survive. But unfortunately, people are too ignorant about the universe and too arrogant and self-assured to learn and adapt to what may lie in the cold expanse of space. So, we are essentially babies, suckling off the teat of technology with very little ability to survive when it comes to what is in the unknown. In 2001, there is a scene of an astronaut in a pair of white short shorts, reminiscent of diapers, having happy birthday sung to him by his parents, while machines pamper him to the point where he doesn't even need to raise his head, just like a baby. Later, the astronauts are also seen eating something akin to baby food. In Alien, the name of the ship's computer in which they receive orders is Mother. Mother! And when the crew of the Nostromo wakes up, they are in capsules wearing the same sort of short diapers, emerging from hypersleep like newborn babes in the unfeeling dark of space. Both crews, as a direct contrast to their infantilization, are put through the rigors of the evil and the unknown arena outside of their juvenile knowledge of the universe, and are utterly obliterated, save our protagonists, Ripley and Dave, who are able to adapt and learn just in time to overcome the evil. Prometheus, upon its initial assessment, was deemed a disappointment, mainly because of the stupidity of the characters. The argument seems to stem from, if these characters are scientists, scholars of logical methodology, and are supposed to be intelligent, why do they do so many stupid things?
She's mesmerized.
Well, in the original Alien series, and within the main antecedents of the horror genre, the idea that man is inexperienced and ill-equipped to handle the inhuman and evil elements that may be found in the universe is a common theme that has some very deep philosophical waters. Around the beginning of the 20th century, H.P. Lovecraft pioneered a philosophy called cosmic horror, or cosmicism. Cosmicism examines how people are powerless against what lies beyond our understanding of reality. All our claims to what is good, evil, and moral are nothing but products of our ego.
Everything will disappear, and human actions are as free and as stripped of meaning as the unfettered movements of the elementary particles. Good, evil, morality, sentiments, pure Victorian fictions. All that exists is egotism, cold, intact, and radiant.
If Shakespeare's claim in Hamlet is that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy, then Lovecraft's claim is that what is not dreamt in our modern philosophy might be the cause of our demise. Where Hamlet thought that the ghost of his father might actually be the devil, tricking him into damnation by convincing him to kill his uncle, a Lovecraft story might have the main character come across an entity that is neither devil nor angel, but is simply foreign and not sharing in the mores of humankind. These entities possess abilities and powers that are far beyond basic rationale and people's own ability to defend themselves. The main character's downfall in a Lovecraft story occurs when they meddle in what they should not have meddled in, or when their curiosity leads them down a path that goes straight into the dark depths of the unknown. According to Lovecraft, man is vastly insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. We are ants that other greater beings can easily and unconscionably step on and annihilate or do with what they please. One of the more horrifying notions to be implied by the cosmicism philosophy is that we are helpless against what exists in the unknown. We cannot fathom the rationale of whatever may lurk in the universe, in the same way an insect cannot fathom the rationale of a human.
It is ridiculous to imagine that, at the edge of the cosmos, other well-intentioned and wise beings await to guide us towards some sort of harmony. In order to imagine how they might treat us were we to come into contact with them, it might be best to recall how we treat inferior intelligences such as rabbits and frogs. In the best cases, they serve as food for us. Sometimes also, often in fact, we kill them for the sheer pleasure of killing. Thus, warned would be the true picture of our future relationship to those other intelligent beings. Perhaps some of the more beautiful human species would be honored and would end up on the dissection table, that's all.
Cosmic horror is what the Alien franchise runs on. The basic thesis of the movies is that the ego of mankind cannot even remotely prepare them for the cold and inhuman evils found in the universe. When one rolls their eyes in frustration at the scientist playing with a dangerous snake-like creature instead of running away, or the crew who thinks they can outsmart what exists in the unknown, we are really rolling our eyes at the arrogance and stupidity of the ego. What does the arrogance that causes ignorance and stupidity lead to? Disaster? Mistake after mistake? People headstrong to the extent that they poke their heads into arenas that they should have never sought? The evil outside of their knowledge, continuously falling into the pitfalls that they have ignored in the unknown? In the Lovecraft short, Nyarlathotep, a city is afflicted with the presence of a pharaoh-type god, Nyarlathotep. And despite the inhabitants of the city having uneasy and tortured minds on account of the strange new figure, they still crowd around him out of curiosity to watch disturbing magical spectacles, one in which ends with them being driven away by Nyarlathotep and enslaved in a hellish dimension. When confronted with evil, and even with a horrified presentiment to warn them of the nature of Nyarlathotep, their curiosity gets the better of them, and they essentially go to hell. I remember when Nyarlathotep came to my city, the great, the old, the terrible city of unnumbered crimes. My friend had told me of him, and of the impelling fascination and allurement of his revelations, and I burned with eagerness to explore his uttermost mysteries. My friend said they were horrible and impressive beyond my most fevered imaginings. Where curiosity is not a problem in of itself, when people are so accustomed to evil in their own lives, living in a terrible city of unnumbered crimes for instance, they may have the audacity to cross the threshold of something that may bring about their utter hellish demise. According to Dante's Divine Comedy, what you do on earth reflects not only on where you are put in hell, but what type of punishment you receive. So, in a Christianic religious sense, actions have consequences, if not in life, then in the afterlife. What the horror genre accomplishes is to bring this sort of eternal damnation to the physical, and instead of sins perpetrated in the flesh being a tally towards the torment in hell, actions have direct consequences, and characters get their hell on earth. Where Dante's hell looks like this, the poster art for the new Alien movie looks like this. Pretty similar. The consequence of the characters' actions in the Alien franchise leads them on a course to hell, where there are demonic creatures that brutally murder or essentially rape them. In Prometheus, we find out that the alien creatures came from an alien pathogen, seen in the film as black goo.
Organic.
That another sentient alien race that predates humans, called engineers, tested on a barren planet to make biological weapons. But instead of everything going smoothly, the alien pathogen breaks out and kills the engineers.
You know what this place is? Those, engineers, this ain't their home. It's an installation, maybe even military. And they put it out here in the middle of nowhere because they're not stupid enough to make weapons of mass destruction on their own doorstep.
In other words, according to the tropes of cosmicism, they meddled in what they shouldn't have meddled in and were deservedly destroyed.
It's like a scene out of some sort of Holocaust painting.
So what did the humans do to deserve their destruction? Meddle? Be stupid and ignorant? Yes. But it's the reason that they are stupid and ignorant enough to meddle that is the real problem. Whether it's the soulless corporate mindset that leads people into dangerous places, or our own hubris, the comeuppance is the same. In a grander sense, the examination of the arrogance of people through the lens of cosmicism might illuminate why people collectively march into disaster after disaster, from societal problems such as wars, pollution, genocide, and poverty, to personal problems such as unfaithfulness, self-destruction, and interpersonal squabbles. Is the main issue that we repeat the sins of the past and do not learn from and avoid them, leaving every evil mankind has experienced in the collective unknown to be repeated over and over again? Or are we just too dumb to adapt to anything outside of our egotistical comforts, that we could just walk right into a trap without even so much as knowing that we have crossed an invisible threshold? The narrative of the Alien franchise seems to point to our inability to learn from the past, causing our inability to properly adapt to the present.